off. Soteria is entering a critical value creation stage as the battery safety shifts from a feature to now a mandatory infrastructure across EVs and aviation, grid storage, consumer electronics. I think everybody's pretty much aware of the problem as well as the solutions and regulations around this. Soteria delivers an inherently safe battery tech by embedding proprietary chemistry-agnostic materials inside the battery cell itself, which then addresses the root cause of lithium-ion battery fires. The technology does reduce battery fire incidents by 90 to 99%. It also lowers battery weight and cost through significant reduction in the use of copper, and it doesn't require changes to existing battery manufacturing processes. Soteria does not manufacture batteries. Instead, it operates a scalable licensing and royalty model supported by a global consortium of industrial and strategic partners. The solution is compatible with almost all advanced lithium-ion battery chemistries and form factors. So a couple things that differentiate Soteria. Materials level safety infrastructure addresses failure at the source as opposed to relying on monitoring or post-event mitigation. It is chemistry agnostic and manufacturing compatible, so it integrates into the existing battery supply chains without any redesign. It's capital light licensing model, so it scales through partners rather than manufacturing intensity. And Brian and his team have done an amazing job building out this consortium, which he'll be talking about momentarily. In addition, meaningful cost and weight advantages. So we're talking about upwards of 80% reduction in copper usage and deep industry validation. The global consortium has over 130 active partners, including some amazing companies and groups and organizations and name brands. So with that, I'm glad you guys joined us, and hopefully you'll find this to be a very informative session. We will be ending at 2 o'clock Eastern, at which point Brian is going to be hosting an IPO discussion with his investment banker. As many of you know, the company is on the verge of doing some very interesting public market strategic things. So anyway, thank you guys for joining us. I want to turn things over to Brian Morin, who is the founder and CEO of Soteria. Welcome, Brian.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. And I'll go ahead and share my screen so everybody can see. Let me get back to the front slide. So thank you, everybody. My name is Brian Morin. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Soteria. Like Tian said, if you have a question, you can just break in or you can type it in the chat. I'm happy to answer questions along the way rather than waiting till the end. But Soteria, there's a couple things to know about the company, but we're a company that is dedicated to lithium-ion battery safety. We've got several ways that we address it, and I'll talk to you about them along the way. But the business model is a broad-based licensing business model, and there's several things we're doing to walk into that. But when I talk about the business model, think companies like Qualcomm and ARM Holdings. That's what we're targeting to grow up into. So the track record for the company, the story of the company, we started with this revolutionary technology that I'll explain in a few minutes that reduces the probability of a battery fire by more than 90%, while also reducing the weight and the cost. We have a consistent record now of execution and adoption with our growing consortium. 2/3 of our revenue is now product revenue. And then we are targeting, for various reasons, a near-term IPO, prepping for it to be filing in the second quarter, and then the IPO will be there either in the third or the fourth quarter. So when I say battery fire, a lot of people don't know, have a good sense of what that means. This is a street-side cafe in New York City in the fall of 2022. You can hear the scooter up there making noises, and now it's just emitted a cloud of what you don't know, but it's a poisonous flammable gas. You do find out it's flammable when there's a spark and everything ignites, and the nice lady gets a warm up for a cup of coffee that she wasn't expecting. This happened about 300 times last year in New York, about 500 times in London. And when you multiply that around the globe, you end up with 10,000 or tens of thousands of fires. hundreds of millions of dollars of property damage, billions of dollars of recalls, and this is year after year after year. And just to give you a sense, there are 3 car carrying ships that are at the bottom of the ocean now because a brand new EV caught fire, ignited the other fires on the ships. All they can do is get the crew off and wait for it to go out. A couple of them went out while they were still floating. A few of them went out and sank to the bottom of the ocean. So it's not just old batteries, right? It's brand new batteries. Market size is very big and growing quickly, and the problem's getting worse, not better. So our vision is inherently safe batteries everywhere. And I'll talk about our technology portfolio in a minute, but we make the cells inherently safe by putting something in that acts like a circuit breaker on the inside of the battery and reduces the probability of a fire by more than 90% by eliminating the ignition event. We have a second technology that detects the gases that come out of a battery before it catches fire and can give you advanced warning of up to 30 minutes before the battery fire so that the fire department can be on site in gear with hoses, removing the problem materials before the fire starts, rather than trying to deal with, that side of my warehouse is on fire and how do I protect my people. So this is our technology in a cell phone size cell. On the left are normal cells. On the right are the same cells, exactly the same, except with our technology implemented. And when I start the video, what you see on the left is first a shower of sparks. That's the release of the electrical energy. And then the flammable materials are burning. On the right, there's no shower of sparks, no release of electrical energy. So there's no ignition, no fire. It's the candle that's still burning. The cat didn't knock it over, right? Is the way to think about it. This is now the same thing in cylindrical cells. The top's a nail penetration test. We drive a nail in to create a short circuit. On the bottom, it's a 90-degree crush test, which bends the battery. Again, on the left, you get that shower of sparks, release of the electrical energy, ignition of the flammable materials. On the right, there's no shower of sparks, no ignition, no fire. This picture gives me comfort because this is what I imagine the cells look like after you've driven your EV into a tree at 90 miles an hour. They're bent, they're crushed, they're penetrated, they're still working. And I'll share at the end of the presentation, we recently did some ballistics tests where now we've shown that you can shoot a bullet through the batteries, and they also continue to function after they've taken a bullet through them. So they can take a lot of damage and keep working. These cells are still functioning cells. So now how does it work? Quick 90-degree science lesson. Every battery has 5 basic layers. Aluminum and copper foils bring the electricity in and out of the battery. Coated on them are the anode and cathode materials, which hold the electricity. That's where the lithium's stored. And then in between those is a plastic membrane called a separator, which allows the lithium to go back and forth, but keeps the electrodes electrically isolated. Every battery fire starts when something penetrates or compromises that plastic membrane. Energy from the battery flows into that spot and generates heat. The heat causes the plastic membrane to melt and shrink, opening up a bigger hole with more energy flowing, more heat, more melting, more shrinking. And that's what cascades into that shower of sparks that you saw in the last video. So what we do 2 things differently. The first is we replace the plastic membrane, the plastic separator, with a nanofiber-based nonwoven. That is a fancy way of saying that we use paper with very small fibers. We start with textile-grade fibers, so these are fibers that you can buy in your clothes. So think of it as a very highly crystalline rayon. We fibrillate that down to nanofibers using paper-making techniques, so water-based, inexpensive. And then reinforce that nanofiber pulp with fibrillated Kevlar, and the Kevlar is stable to over 500 degrees Celsius. So with that Kevlar backbone, this nanofiber nonwoven separator is never going to melt or shrink, so we don't have the problem we had on the left side. The other thing we do is we replace the aluminum and copper foils with a metallized film. So on the left, they're solid foils, metal all the way through. What we do is we take a thin sheet of plastic, coat it with metal on both sides, just enough metal to run the battery. But now when you get a short circuit, there's not enough metal to drive the intense currents that'll light it on fire. So when you get the short circuit, the energy dumps in briefly, the separator stays put, and now it's not the separator that fails, but it's the current collector that fails. And when that happens, it opens the short circuit, stops the flow of energy into the short circuit. So you no longer have the energy flowing. There's no ignition, and no ignition means no fire. The rest of the battery keeps working, and that's what you saw in the video. The nail went in, the current collector pulled away, the rest of the cell kept working. And then I'll say the beauty of this is that we take out about, or we don't use about 80% of the aluminum and the copper. And that means that the battery is between 10 and 20% lighter weight. And the copper makes it, the lack of copper, not using the copper makes it less expensive, because copper is both heavy and expensive. And when I say it's lighter weight and less expensive, what I mean is that we've now built hundreds of batteries where the weight reduction is shown, and that people are offering our materials for sale at a lower price than the price of the solid foils. So we've proven those statements. I made those statements a long time ago, but we've now proven those statements all the way through to production and commercialization. So now one other feature of the technology, the separator, I said it was made with a highly crystalline rayon. Rayon's made from cellulose, and cellulose loves water, right? So we've all worn sweaty cotton t-shirts. But water's a bad actor in batteries. So we have to dry our separator bone dry before we build the batteries. Once we do that, it now acts as a getter for water inside the batteries. So as the battery ages and water is generated, the water is absorbed into the polymer structure of the separator, and it's no longer mobile and able to do the bad things it does. The other thing is what the water does is it reacts with the electrolyte to create hydrofluoric acid. And that hydrofluoric acid is, our separator, the cellulose, is very acid reactive. So that hydrofluoric acid normally destroys all sorts of components throughout the battery. With us, it just reacts with the separator, shortens the polymer chain length in the separator, but otherwise has no effect, but doesn't attack the rest of the separator. The net is the charts that you see in front of you, which is that we get a very much higher cycle life than normal batteries. We've tested here the cycle life. This 1C means it's a 1 hour charge, 1 hour discharge. We've tested now against the best batteries from LG and Panasonic and Samsung. EVE is a top Chinese company, and then Cham is kind of a second tier Chinese company. And what you see is they're ending at 200 or 300 cycles here, and we go out over 1,000. And when you charge faster, this 1.5C means it's a 40-minute charge. If you start to do a fast charge, the other cells degrade very quickly, and ours are now living to kind of 8 or 9 times as long as the other cells do. So competition in safety technologies is an interesting discussion. And what I like to say is that safety technologies don't compete with each other, they stack. And the example is that if you think about cars, you have seat belts and airbags and anti-lock brakes and crumple zones and bumpers and radar and lane keeping and rear view cameras. And every time you add a new one, you don't get rid of the others. The funny joke is that, you know, our kids will be driving cars that don't have steering wheels, but they'll still have a seat belt. And I really believe that's true. I think there's already steering wheels being removed from the cars, but seat belts are always there. So these other ways of getting to safety. Safety is a very important problem in the battery industry, and everybody's working on it. There are pack level solutions. There are solid state batteries. There's lithium iron phosphate and sodium ion. And I'm not going to argue about which of those is safer or how they affect it. The truth is our technology stacks with all of those, and we're working with companies that do each of these strategies to implement our technology into their batteries. And in every case, it makes them safer. We have over 140 issued patents. That number is going up every month. And now I'm going to shift and talk about the business model. I mentioned earlier it's a broad-based licensing business model. We're doing 3 things in the business to drive to that broad-based licensing business model. The first was to form a consortium of companies focused on battery safety. Here you can see the consortium members spread throughout the supply chain, the large equipment and material manufacturers on the left, large number of cell builders in the middle, and then the end users on the right. And the idea is that the consortium does three things. The first is that they are going to be the supply chain for our technology, the supply chain and the customers. So we've worked with the material manufacturers to scale and commercialize our materials. We're now working with cell manufacturers to scale and commercialize the cells, and that's been done. And we're working with the end users to implement those cells in their devices. The second thing is that the consortium is an innovation group. And so at any given time, we have about 50 projects going on where every project is either a new material, a new cell, or a new device. And what that does is it makes us very highly leveraged against the capabilities of this group, to the extent that it's my estimate that they spend about 10 times as much on R&D to advance our technology as we do. And of course, the promise to them is that that they get to use the technology with a low royalty rate, but the promise seems to be working. And then the third thing the consortium does is to act as a standards organization to write safety standards that are much safer than traditional UL type safety standards, with the idea that we will certify to those standards and use voluntary branding to show that they've been certified, but then sit on the committees at UL and SAE and other organizations to write our features into the I'll say the normal and the obligatory standards. So the consortium will always be the backdrop. It's the backdrop to everything we do. The centerpiece of our business model is delivering safety technology through licensing. But as I said, we've had to develop materials. We now have cells that we've built. A couple of years ago, we bought a small company, Voltiplex, that takes these cells and builds them into packs and delivers them into scientific equipment, material handling, robotics, medical equipment. We've done a couple of certifications, and we do have this new product that I'll talk about in just a minute. As a company last year, about a third of our revenue came from the consortium and licensing activities, and the other 2/3 came from product sales. And so another way to look at the business model is to kind of go through it in time. At the beginning, we looked like a consortium. So we have this collaborative group that we use to understand problems, develop solutions, scale the solutions. We are now building our technologies into products and selling those products into high value segments. So we talk about critical environments, but when I say critical environments, it's places where even one battery fire is not acceptable. So think up in the air, underwater, underground in a mine, out to sea, in a hospital, in a data center. These are places where the consequences of a fire are dire and need to be avoided, and so they'll pay extra for a safer battery. So we're using outsourced manufacturing to deliver products, and then the long-term goal is to license, where we expect the big companies that see us using the technologies in the smaller niche parts of the market we'll want to move them into the big parts, and we'll do that under license, not trying to insert ourselves into the supply chain of an Apple or a Mercedes or any of the other big companies. So this is our projections. What you see is that for the next few years, we look like a product company, right? The products are kind of the red and the blue in the middle. But then at the end of the decade, and certainly into the 2030s, we will look more like a licensing company and less like a product company. A couple of products to talk about. This is our Voltiplex Life. This is the one that I shared the cycle life data from. It's commercially available now. It's been certified to the UN standard. It's been placed in a one application, which is a remote video monitoring camera, where it's the number of charges it gets really has to do with how often that cell or battery pack has to be replaced. And we expect it'll end up in places like cell phone towers, and all sorts of remote monitoring or remote signaling applications that are usually solar powered and small battery packs, and driven by the cycle of replacing the battery packs, which we can extend. To give you a sense, this cell you see is called an 18650. It's 18 millimeters in diameter and 65 in length. Think of it as the AA of lithium-ion batteries. There's 11 billion of them sold every year, so we can get designed into a lot of different applications. And then this is our Soteria Sense product, and I don't think I've mentioned this. So let me walk into it. Uh, this is the product that gives advanced warning before a battery fire. So when a battery is going to self-ignite, and that's really the problem, that batteries don't require a cat to tip the candle over. A battery can be sitting there with nothing happening, and then 10 seconds later it has ignited and you can't breathe the air in the room. And that's the kind of scary part, is that there's no causality. It just happens. Uh, when it's going to self-ignite on its own, it is getting hot. It's warming up in the middle. That will evaporate the electrolyte. It also will kick off some chemical reactions that also generate gases. And so it's building up pressure as it warms up. When the pressure gets to a certain point, the electrolyte or these gases will first leak and then burst out of the case. And it's that leak and that burst, those leaks and that burst, that we detect. If you're in the room, you can smell it, you can hear it, but you may not know what it is because we're not trained in these things. But we've built a detector based on sensors that detect these gases and created algorithms to tell you when those gases, the concentration, is indicative of a battery fire, and when or a battery fire that hasn't yet happened, but a battery venting event. And then the sensor will send an alarm to your cell phone, to let you know there's something going on. And we think that through machine learning and through collecting lots of data out in the field, we can eventually improve this, not to just to be a warning, but to be a percentage, to be able to give you a probability of a bad event happening. So we might be able to say, hey, and there's a 25% chance that in the next 30 minutes something's going to happen. And then over the next 5 minutes, that might change to, hey, there's a 70% chance that in the next 5 minutes something's going to happen. And that tells you how to respond. But that's going to require a lot of data for us to get to that right now. And to give you a sense, we have 200 or so of these coming in the next couple weeks. Those are mostly spoken for, but then 1,000 are coming in the second quarter, which will be more available, and those will be going out to distribution and into places like e-bike shops and others. Our strategy in automotive is to work with the luxury and specialty manufacturers. We have projects with every one of these companies, Add, Volkswagen, General Motors, and others. And the idea is that and this is the way all safety technologies do, but they start at the top of the value chain, and then they eventually become mandated for everything. We think that takes most of the 2030s for that to actually happen. We've won a ton of awards. Management team has been together now for 6 years. Vic is a new addition. Vic is our fractional CFO who's walking us through the IPO process. And then there's several reasons for us to IPO, but one of them, and I'll talk about the rest on the next page, one of them is that the comparable battery companies are treated very well on the public exchange. This list of 15 or so public battery companies, average revenue is if I leave out QuantumScape, the average revenue is about 20 million. The average market cap is about 900 million. And that's a nice ratio. And honestly, and if I look at where we fit, I just look at this list. This list is sorted by market cap. We should be in this kind of Nano One to Novonix range, right? That's where I think and we may have to earn our way into that. So we may start a little lower and have to earn our way in. But that's where we would slip, kind of very much objectively looking at both revenue and technology. And so it gives us a nice access to capital and nice valuation. The other reasons for us to go public, it really is an access to capital. Our business model, which is built to allow the maximum access to our technology. And here's where I have to talk for a second about the heart of the company. A lot of companies, when they start, they have a technology and they say, okay, how can I make the most money? And they build a business model and try to make some money and then sell the company. We have a technology that can save lives. And so we ask the question, not how can I make the most money, but how can I have the biggest impact? And when you ask the question that way, you automatically go to a broad access business model, which is what Qualcomm and ARM Holdings have, and several others, right? RCA did this with the radio and the television. But that broad-based licensing business model becomes a little bit of a poison pill to a strategic acquisition. And if you think back, Google bought YouTube so they could keep Yahoo from having it. And I know some people here on the line may not be old enough to remember that, but many of us are. If we're giving access to Volkswagen and Mercedes and BMW, there's no reason for Volkswagen to buy it because they already have access, and second, it's not going to prevent Mercedes and BMW from getting access. And so our business model is a little bit of a poison pill for a strategic acquisition, which means that an IPO is the right way for us to both access capital and exit the business. And so it drives us in that direction. And then it's just very nice that the public markets are being as kind as they are to battery technology companies, which makes us have a very strong belief that we'll be able to execute this safely or effectively. And what you can see here is our target to file with the SEC is the end of April. Target for the IPO is August 30th. If either of them slipped by a month or two, it's not the end of the world. So what we're offering now is we have a secured note, which is secured by our IP, but also secured by a letter of credit that's backed by an insurance company with a $160 million balance sheet. So that's available. And then more traditionally, we have a convertible note which converts into equity at the IPO at a discount, so has a guaranteed return with interest until then, and then warrant coverage. And for those of you who are able to make a decision and invest in the month of March, we're increasing the warrant coverage and doing it on par with the IPO price. The warrants after March will be at a slightly higher price than the IPO. And so with that, I'll stop, take questions, and if I've been perfectly clear, then maybe there won't be any, but hopefully you guys have some thoughts and questions. So happy to talk to you.
Yes, we do have some questions in the chat box.
Great.
So, first of all, as far as the slides go, Joe put the link to the slides so you guys can download directly. And if you have any issues with that, let us know and we're happy to email to you. As far as Marty Koev has a question about lead investors. Do you have a lead investor?
Yeah. So for this bridge round, there's kind of two things. Our existing investors are the lead investors, and so that's a group called Keiretsu Forum. But then we're also writing in a most favored nation that we've hired an investment bank, and they're going to be raising a bridge round for us. If somebody comes in with and demands better terms than we take them, we will rewrite any investment we take now into those. So it has a most favored nation clause in it.
Got it. Larry Cirillo, what is the difference in insurance rates versus lithium?
So here's something I learned this week. Most of your homeowners policies have a exclusion for fires that are started by lithium-ion batteries, and if not lithium-ion batteries, then e-bikes themselves. And so we are working closely with a couple of insurance companies to set up a program where they can give you one of our Soteria senses and allow you to purchase a rider for your homeowner's policy that will allow it to be covered for an e-bike fire. So if you have a e-bike now and you're parking it in the garage like I park mine, then know that if it catches fire, you may not be covered, which is sort of a terrifying thought. But yeah, no, the insurance companies are going to be a big ally for us.
Yeah. I think Larry had another question. How hard would it be to reverse engineer the membrane?
Yeah, so two answers there. to take the membrane and look at it and see what's in it, that's doable. To see how we got there, right? So how we started with these highly crystalline fibers and fibrillated them down to the size and distribution of fibers that we have, and how we blend it, and then how you run that through a paper machine to get very thin papers with the right uniformity. Those parts are very difficult. And in fact, we've never been copied, right? So we've taught a couple companies how to do it, but have never been copied in doing that. And so yeah, it's, can you find out what's in it? Yes, but can you figure out how to do it? That's going to require a lot of work.
Thank you. Stephen had a question. Are you planning a Reg A plus issue or are you filing an S1? And how much are you trying to raise?
It's an S1, and the target is, and it depends on demand, right? So I'll say the target raise is between 15 and 25 million. We are definitely going to leave some demand on the table when we choose, how much to take out of the book. So think of 15 million. I'll target 15. Our burn last year was 3 million. Our burn, next year after the IPO is probably going to be 6, because we'll hire a few extra salespeople and a little bit of extra development resources. But we definitely want to leave some demand on the table so that the stock price has some active trading after the IPO.
Got it. And speaking of that, we have a couple questions about the IPO. What is the estimated timeline for the IPO and who is your investment banker?
Yeah, timeline is expected to be in the third quarter. It might drift into October, right? So, but we're targeting the third quarter. The S1 is being drafted now, so I'm told that a draft of the S1 exists and it's going through kind of the attorney's quality control. But I should see a draft next week. Our investment banker is Rodman and Renshaw. They're going to help us raise this bridge round. So the other thing is the convertible note is available until it's filled, but it might be filled with 1 or 2 checks within weeks or a month. And so if you're interested, we definitely need to get engaged now. But yeah, and to give you a sense, Rodman and Renshaw, they're a historically excellent company. They raised about $4 billion last year for public companies and focus in this kind of micro cap, small cap area. And the 2 individuals that we're working with have done 8 IPOs between them. So it's a good group. They haven't done hundreds, but they've done enough that this isn't new to them.
Got it. And just continuing along those lines, Brian, you're hosting a call at 2 o'clock in about 20 minutes with your investment banker, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. And we would ask if there's, service providers on, if you guys could engage us separately. I want that call to be for investors only. But other than that, we're happy to have people attend who are, who are interested in investing.
Got it. And Anish has a question. Are these GDP disposable for mobility or tariffs, as in or trade?
I don't even know if I know what that question meant.
Anish, are you still on? Would you like to?
Yes,
Thank
greetings.
you. Hi.
Um, yeah, I wanted to know whether these are allocated regards to like industrial usage or any kind of warehouse staff. A lot of times people have comms or any type of logistics software products that we use. It's kind of just like for mobility purposes, like to be really like just blatant like a mouse or a clicker, and then be able to go somewhere, or is it like even like a walkie-talkie if you're out in a field somewhere?
Yeah. So, and I assume you're talking about our batteries here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So most of the batteries that we sell today are in small devices, right? So they're in handheld devices, but they're also in uh, uh, things like material handling. So think all the little robots that are running around the Amazon warehouses. We have thousands of batteries in there. Medical equipment, so breathing assistance. And so that we're in a number of different things. Of course, we're in a tiny fraction of the market. Just to give a sense, we're probably selling just under 1 million of those cells a year, and there's 11 billion sold, right? So we're 10,000, 1/10,000th of the market, right? We got a lot of growing we can do.
Yes, absolutely. Because I know that's the reason why I asked is if it's connected to the infrastructure, or it has to do with people are installing your water heater now is mounted to a wall. Your battery for charging your vehicle is mounted to a wall. If you go to any type of restaurant, they have tables now that have your charging on it. So if you're working from a laptop in a bistro or anything, it's charging your laptop and your phone while you're sitting there. Have you guys entered any of those spaces that are, I guess I would guess you would refer to that as like stationary, I guess?
So not yet. We're in what I call, and I talked about it a little bit, but these critical environments, right? So we're in special equipment where the equipment makers want to make sure that their batteries are either longer lasting or safer, because they want to give that comfort to their customers. But we're looking at markets like rugged electronics. We will be this year launching a power bank. And you may or may not know, but almost every power bank manufacturer had their power banks recalled this year. And I will tell you that the ones that didn't just slipped under the radar screen. It's not that they're safer; it's just that they didn't sell enough power banks to create enough fires to get on the radar screen. We're going to launch one with our cells in it. And these are the cells that you could drive a nail through or shoot a bullet through, and they won't catch fire. The target for them, not initially to be consumers. The target is places like airlines and hospitals and mining companies who have their personnel carrying power banks, but for whom a little bit extra cost is nothing, and the consequences of a fire are something they definitely want to avoid, right?
Yes, I completely agree. That is,
But
that's actually one of the biggest reasons wildfires have been starting, because a lot of people have been taking like small little plastic products that they have, and then just that's why I asked if it was disposable, if it was a use and throw, or it was a part of like a larger e-waste, because they've been finding that they'll like throw their product outside, like their headphones, they don't like it, they're like, I'll get this is cheap, I'll get a new one. And then that, when it's really hot out, like the battery will melt and then end up causing like a fire in the forest or something.
yeah.
It sounds crazy, but that's happened several times.
Yeah, thank you. I will say, as a tiny incentive for people to invest, that we will be, for any investor, we'll be giving you one of these power banks once we've made them. So you won't get them when you send us the check, but once we've made them, we'll be giving you a power bank and the right to buy more for your friends and family if you want to keep them safer. Uh, and Anish, it looks like there's one more question in the chat, if it's okay if I jump to it.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Yeah. So this is.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
You want to read it, Tiana, or you want me to?
Yeah, I just wanted to let everyone know that I put in the chat the link to the Teams call at 2 o'clock Eastern, which is right after this call. So Marty Koev had a question regarding, can you hold off on the IPO? And I don't know, Marty, are you looking at like what the optionality is here for Brian, or what?
Yeah. The answer to that is, and I don't know, Marty, if you want to clarify the question, but the answer is that most VCs, if you can't tell them we're targeting a strategic exit to a strategic company, they don't believe when you say IPO, and so it makes our investing in us very difficult for VCs, because they can't see an exit, right? And so the private markets have been a challenge for us, and that's why we're going to raise money on the public markets. The other thing that's nice is that we don't need a ton of money to get to profitability. So we're different from a lot of other companies that go public, where to get to profitability, they need 100, 200, $500 million. We can cheerfully get along with, 5 or 10% of that. So, holding off would require somebody to come along and say, actually, we're going to pay you to hold off because we think we can make a lot more money if you grow a little bit privately first. And I'm certainly open to those conversations, but they aren't coming quickly, right? So.
Mm-hmm. Got it. David had a question here. I represent the third largest LFP battery manufacturer. Goshen, would you allow us to test the material in the investment process? We don't invest unless we use the technology.
And here's the thing, David, we would love to work with you guys to test it, whether you just want to be a customer or whether you want to invest, right? So definitely would, and I'll make sure we reach out after the call, but we're definitely interested in working with you guys to test it. And honestly, also our Sense product, right, which you can use to protect your factories. You know, most of you probably know, but many of the people online don't. There was a massive battery fire at one of the best lithium-ion battery companies last year, uh, E1 Moly in Taiwan, and so nobody's immune, right? It's when a battery fire happens at a battery factory, it's not because they were negligent or didn't have good procedures. It's just a volatile chemistry, right? You're putting a lot of energy in a small package, so.
Got it. I just launched a poll, so for those of you who are interested, if you could, if we could get 100% participation. This is confidential, by the way. It's just for Brian and his team. So if you're very interested, you want to set up a meeting right away. If you're interested, you want more information. Not interested, but you may know some other investors, or not interested at all. If you could indicate that, that would be great. Um, I want to open it up to the floor. If anybody would like to ask a question, you just raise your hand and we can call on you. Or if you have additional questions, you can post them right into the chat box. Any other thoughts or comments? Brian, Joe? Oh, here we go. Mark Jennings, what VCs are invested?
So we have among our institutional investors, our primary investor is a group called Keiretsu Forum. They are a group of about 3,000 family offices and high net worths that they invest about $100 million a year. They have invested about 14 million in us, which has come in at about $2 million a year for the last 6 or 7 years. So that's where most of the money has come from. Through them, we have several small funds that have invested, but no Sequoias or other brand names that you would recognize.
Thank you for that. I put the link to the call at 2 o'clock, which is 15 minutes from now, 2 o'clock Eastern, with Brian and his investment banker to talk about the IPO. Does anyone else have any other comments or questions? This has been really informative, guys, and we thank you for joining us. Thank you for answering the poll. And Brian, any last words or?
Yeah, no, the only thing I will say is that we have, as a company, we've experienced a good bit of support from individual investors and small funds. And so we are grateful for that. And that positions us well for the IPO. We have about 175 people on our cap table now. We need 300 at IPO, so it's not a huge lift to get from 175 to 300. But it's folks like you who have supported us through this and helped our technology come to reality. And so I just want to say thank you. If you're interested, we definitely want to talk to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Brian. And with that, we can sort of end the call. And for those of you who are interested in joining, we will see you in about 15 minutes.